Welcome to Good Game, your no BS insights for crypto founders.
I think Polymarket's done an incredible job. Huge respect for what they've done. I think it's really smooth onboarding, great interface. Their marketing has been fantastic. I think come November 6th, we're going to see a very rapid drop off of interest. I know a lot of people are saying, well, look at the non-political market, look at the non-election markets. Those non-election markets are driven by election volume. Like you have this, unprecedented like eyeballs on Polymarket. And then some of those users are going in, they're betting on the election, but they're also like betting on some of these other markets. But I also think that the non-election stuff is going to drop by probably 80% because so much is driven by the volume.
80%?
Yeah, I think it's going to see a massive drop. But that's just because there's so much attention on it today.
Yeah, well, they can convert those users to other markets.
And let's look at the non-election markets today. How interesting are they? Like, okay, interest rate change. That's kind of interesting. But I'm not like jumping out of bed to get on that. I don't have a viewpoint on that. I'm like, okay, I can read, I can listen to the Fed. So that's kind of interesting. Like what else is there? What else is there? Like there's other stuff. Like somebody's going to.
I feel like it's more fun to bet on what Jerome Powell will say during the next FOMC meeting than to bet on the interest rate.
Yeah.
Looking for your next startup idea in crypto? Check out our request for startups list and get inspired at alliance.xyz/ideas.
Crypto might help because in the history of dating apps, there has been like 3 key innovations. The first one was just Tinder, let's swipe left and right. The second one, I can't remember the name, but it's basically...
Hinge?
Hinge is the third one. Okay. But the second one is... yes, I can't remember if Hinge was the second one, but the Hinge is one where the guy needs to message the girl before
Bumble.
Before that's Bumble or that's Hinge?
Bumble. I know I don't know. I'm not dating either.
we're like sort of feeling around this alien planet.
But the second innovation is the guy needs to do something extra, which is messaging the girl. Yeah. So that removes spam, and that also shows a little bit of more of intentionality, more.
Instead of just swiping right and everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And the third innovation is the girl needs to text the guy first before the conversation can start. Uh-huh. So the second and the third iterations are both very interesting because it creates a little bit more intentionality, whether it's starting with the guy or starting with the girl.
Right.
And the mechanism is very simple. It's just the message. But crypto can potentially increase the intentionality even further by staking some money because now you have some skin in the game.
Right.
And if the other person doesn't get matched with you, you lose the money.
Right.
And that amount of money could be very small. It could be like 10 cents. It doesn't have to be like $10. But it could be like something very small. But even that little amount of money can create more friction and more intentionality.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like it.
So that's the current iteration.
Yeah. I like it. That's interesting. But it's aimed at people outside crypto because you're going to have a huge imbalance issue.
But the thing is... so it's going to be the guy DMing the girl first, right? Like the guy needs to stake.
Right.
Most crypto people are guys. Yeah. And the girls can be non-crypto people.
Yeah.
And the stake could be in the form of USDC. So like you could use something like Apple Pay or Google Pay.
Board. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the reason why you need to use USDC is because credit cards charge a minimum fee on every transaction, a flat fee on every transaction.
Yeah, that's right.
You cannot do a microtransaction, micropayment with credit cards. And two, the second problem is there is a chargeback. Yes. So you can pay and then call the credit card and then...
I know all about it.
You know all about it from FanDuel.
Payments is like, honestly, probably the biggest thing that crypto has solved today is payments. Like that's the one thing that it really works for.
Yeah.
Everything else is largely, in my view, apart from store of wealth, is kind of like TBD. But payments is big.
Payments is big. We should talk about it.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
But anyway, like if you think about the history of dating apps, it's like it's such a seemingly trivial change in the app, and then that just totally changes the consumer behavior.
Yeah. And I think the dating apps are struggling now. Actually, they've recently. Yeah.
They are. So what we've seen so far is there is exhaustion.
Yeah.
Because, and you see a lot of tweet threads about this, but like the top 1% good-looking people will match with like the top 5% of girls or something crazy like that. Yeah. And then the rest of the people are down only.
Yeah.
And so, like, in fact, I've
So it's like a pump, but
it's like a pump. the cabal. But what's also interesting is that I've talked to a lot of like users, and a lot of them express the ability to meet people in person. And so they want to like, so now they're going out and meeting more people in person. There's like these like group events that happen, or like matrimonial or matching events where they kind of connect and learn more. So I do think we're going to start to see more people leaving dating apps and starting to do more in real life stuff. The other thing, Nikita Bear, if you know Nikita Bear, I think I shared a tweet with you. The one thing he shared with us, or shared with all of us, was the fact that he thinks that dating apps are going to be down only, and that Instagram's going to take over.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Yeah. And so like it's just easier for people to message people on Instagram because they already have the bio data and all of that. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, he believes that Tinder and Bumble and others will start to just go down because there's this exhaustion in the market of like force matching with people versus just sliding into someone's DM. Like it replicates more of an organic like kind of meetup, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're bumping into somebody.
Yeah.
Like you're sliding and you're going through different reels and you see a hot girl or whatever and you just send a DM.
Interesting.
And that's how the celebrities match too. That's how celebrities hook up with girls all the time. You probably saw like a bunch of, I don't know, Jake Paul and others, they DM girls on Instagram, including like Drake, and they like hook up with girls. Yeah. I mean, this already happens for influencers.
And they have a much higher success rate.
They have a much higher success rate. Then it goes back to like, maybe it's your social following that's going to help you match with someone. Like you get a higher chance of connecting with someone if you have a high follower rate.
Yeah. I guess the challenge with the staking concept is, are they staking enough? Like they have to really signal that there's a lot of money on the line.
Yeah.
Like is a small amount enough? It maybe cuts out the spam and it shows higher intent. But I wonder what the cutoff point is. What's the...
Just have to experiment.
Yeah, you just experiment. You move the slider to the right and see what happens.
Yeah.
I think some dating apps have done that. They were like, it's like, look, if you pay this premium, then you get more DMs, you get the top of the inbox, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's like King of the Hill, pretty much.
But I don't know if that's a negative. Right, yeah. But is that a negative signaling that you're like willing to pay the very top rate and you're willing to put the most in that, then you're maybe struggling the most? Like, it's a difficult game.
Yeah.
It's such a hard game.
I'm glad I'm pre-dating app.
Same.
Yeah. I mean, sort of.
Are we recording?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, great. Well, so we're just
gonna keep going.
Yeah, just swing it.
It seems like the past year or less, it's been all about prediction markets, or really the growth of Polymarket. And within Alliance, we're seeing a ton of pitches. Obviously, every investor I've spoken to, every angel investor I've spoken to, it's all prediction market.
Yeah.
And obviously, like this is because Polymarket has found some product market fit.
Yeah.
They have, I think, $400 to $600 million in volume now. And so, obviously, like your experience, you've founded FanDuel. So maybe, like, talk a bit about like your experience starting off with FanDuel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, actually, even before FanDuel,
I
was at Betfair in sort of 2000 to 2002. Betfair, if you don't know, is like a international betting exchange. You could call it a prediction market. Most of their volume is on horse racing and sports.
Were you the founder of?
No. I joined them quite early on. I do know the founders reasonably well. But it was a betting exchange, but it is essentially the same as Polymarket. Like you take either side of the bet. The interesting thing there is they have had political markets since maybe 2002, 2003. I would say politics is it's certainly less than 2%, probably less than 1% of their total volume.
Like,
so it's like a centralized betting exchange. It's really identical to Polymarket in that it'll show you a market. You can take either side of the bet. If you're not familiar with UK odds, you might struggle with it because it uses digital odds. So say an evens bet is 2.0. 2.0 means if I bet $1, I get $2 back.
Okay.
Or you could, the term in the industry is lay that bet, which is bet against it, which again, obviously you can do in Polymarket. You could bet against Trump. That's not necessarily Kamala's going to win. It's saying that he's going to lose. So the way it works is really it's essentially the same. It's a club. It's not an AMM, and it was very successful, primarily with racing, but then with sports. But politics has been there from very early on. I don't know if they had a market in the 2004 election, but they definitely did by the 2008 election. In 2008, by 2007, we launched a product called HubDub, which was a prediction market, but it was play money because we wanted to target the US. We were trying to figure out whether there was an ad play or something. Like, this is pre-Bitcoin, so we don't have any payments. And 2008, HubDub and a couple of other pay money prediction markets, so Betfair, there was another one, InTrade, did very well. Now, that's the year Obama won, so obviously there was huge focus on it. And as far as I recall, we, out of all 50 markets, we had 40, in 49 that Obama was, when 49 the favorite won. Right, so you could say we called 49 of the states, but actually what actually happened was, Obama won every market that he was favored in, and
this is Betfair.
This was on HubDub.
Okay, HubDub. Okay.
This was on our own.
This is the one with the play money.
This was play money, but Betfair was pretty similar in line with us. So that was 2008. Every year since then, there's been a prediction market that has got a lot of press mentioned since then. So InTrade, we pivoted to become FanDuel in 2009, so we got out of that business. But in 2012, 2016, it was, I think InTrade closed not long, but then there was Predicted, there was IEM. So there has been prediction markets for certainly 16 years. And the one thing to say is they are something that people get very excited about every 4 years. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, and we're in one of those 4 years today, which is there is maximal attention on it. It's a close race, which is always really good. Country's really divided. Yeah. People look to them to give them some sort of certainty or direction or to tell them what's really happening. And they're really good at that. And so we're at that point today where we have this ton of attention. Now, I would also say Polymarket have done a great job. Like, Polymarket are probably 10x where the predictions market were 4 years ago. It's got a really smooth onboarding flow. I think the interface is very, very good. I think their model and their incentives for market making is really good. So I actually think they've done brilliant execution, and we kind of see that now in, like, they've become by far the number one, and they're like massively benefiting from the election cycle. But like previous election cycles did talk about prediction markets and they did track them. So it isn't a new thing like that, even though maybe some people are seeing it for the first time.
Well, you're saying Polymarket is number one now compared to even the Web2 incumbents like...
Oh, it's bigger than Betfair on betting markets, yeah. So I haven't checked the exact numbers, but my impression was Polymarket's probably 10 times bigger than Betfair in terms of betting on the US election. One of the things about Betfair, and one of the reasons why politics is not such a big market is, for a real gambler, you don't want to bet an event that's not going to happen for another 3 months, right? Like, just think about that. Like, that's your capital.
You're in the trenches trading on Pump.
Tied up, right? Yeah, you're on Pump. But like on Betfair, you can bet on 50 horse races a day, one after another. And so, to give you another thing, how kind of crazy this is, in 2020, when it was clear that Biden had won, but certain people weren't accepting that, Trump's odds started coming back, and everyone's like, oh my God.
That's right, yeah.
Maybe there's a chance that he could actually win in some way. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that. What was happening was traders were trying to close their positions, and they're like, I'll take 95 cents on the dollar. Rather than wait to some time, because Betfair did not settle until, I think it was maybe nearly December before they settled. So like they were like, they didn't settle until things had sort of played out. And so Trump's odds came back, not because people thought he was going to win, but it was because traders wanted to close their positions.
Oh, it's like a forced liquidation.
It's for a forced liquidation. Like, even though they're like, no, I know I'm going to get it, 100 cents on the dollar, I'd rather take 95 cents now because then I can go and bet on other stuff.
Yeah.
On a side note, it's quite interesting to see like large news publications now putting in Polymarket odds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we saw that before. We saw that in 2020. And we saw that in 2016. I think it's great. I love the markets for a number of reasons. One of the things I love about the markets is it's a massive bullshit detector.
Yeah.
Like, the media comes up with 100 news stories that they say are significant every day. And maybe one of them week is significant, right? And so it's just great. They're like significant development in the Harris campaign, and they're like X happens, and then you go to the market, and the market's like tumbleweed. That's not a significant development. A significant development is, the first debate, significant development. I can see it in the odds. The Trump assassination attempt, I can see it in the market.
Price controls, you can see it.
Right, you said price controls, right? So you can see these things, and the market then says this is a real thing and this is not. So it's really good at that. Some people mistakenly think that it predicts the future.
That's what I wanted to get to.
Yeah, it doesn't do that.
Yeah.
It is not a predictor of the future. It gives a probability of something might happening, but it's not. For example, ETFs. Right? Well, they're at 5% immediately before it was announced, and they're like, "Well, it must be wrong." Well, no, it was a 1 in 20 shot. Anyone who bets on sports knows that happens about 1 in 20 times.
Do you agree with Vitalik that it's a truth-seeking machine?
Is it a truth-seeking machine?
Because that's how he labels prediction markets.
I don't think that's a terrible, I think it's kind of a bullshit weighing machine would be my description, which is there's so much of this bullshit out there and we don't know what is true, and it is really good at saying this is real and this is not real. There's so much incentive, perverse incentives in the media market to create narratives.
Yeah.
And then how do you as a consumer weigh it? So, the media wants every day to have the breaking headline, right? This is breaking. You must read this. I want your time. And the prediction market, I think, is very good at saying, none of this matters. None of this matters. You go check. What you could do if you wanted to reduce your media consumption is just go to the market every morning and see if it's moved. If it hasn't, you don't need to read any politics.
So remember, on the note of how much predictive power it has, the prediction markets have. So do you remember in 2016, the night before the election night, before the results came out, the pundits put Trump's odds at like 5 to 10%. Do you remember what the odds were on the the prediction markets?
Yeah, so I believe, in fact, I'm currently reading Nate Silver's book because he's writing about it. Now, he put Trump at about 30%. I think he was 29% is exactly where he was at. Some of the pundits were like 5 to 10%. They were way off. The markets, I believe, were at about 20%.
Okay.
I misremembered. Maybe I misremember. I thought they were about 30%. But certainly, I think Nate Silver said that they were 20%.
So the market did better than the mainstream media.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. They absolutely did. I'm pretty certain they were 30, but I could be off. They were somewhere in that 20 to 30%. So which made him either between a 1 in 3 and a 1 in 5 candidate.
Mm.
Did you see the article recently where the U.S. wanted to ban prediction markets?
Yes.
How much truth is there to that? I'm sure you've seen this over the course of the past 16 years.
So that's a more narrow case. So Kalashi is a regulated prediction market, we would call it. In fact, they've gone down the route of being regulated by the CFTC, and they've created certain contracts that they want people to be able to trade.
So prediction markets have to be regulated by the CFTC? Because obviously the SEC...
Is it a gray area?
It's a lot of things in the US, it's a gray area.
Because CFTC did a class action... didn't they do a class action
against
Polymarket
yes,
too?
And then Polymarket went offshore.
So they went offshore and now
correct.
US is geo-blocked.
That's correct. So it's complicated. If you're taking a sports bet, which you could say is a prediction market, it kind of is, that's covered under the Wire Act. And that, what would say is you couldn't do that across state lines. The Wire Act is a 72 law.
So only for each state.
So sports betting only happens within states. So, if you're in New Jersey, you're betting with a book in New Jersey, you can't bet across state lines. You could say a sports book in New Jersey or in New York is a prediction market. The problem they have is that they have to go to their regulator for every new betting type that they
any new contracts.
Any new contracts. So, for example, West Virginia for a hot moment told FanDuel that they could take bets on, I think it was the 2020 market election, and that quickly got overturned because it was an uproar. So, in theory, the New Jersey Gaming Commission could allow the books to do it in New Jersey, and the other gaming commissions could do it. None of them have done it, apart from West Virginia, did it once and then reversed. And in theory, the CFTC could allow Kalshi to do it, but they've blocked it. Generally, the CFTC will try to stop Kalshi from doing anything.
Yeah.
And Kalshi have taken a fairly litigious approach which has been necessary for them to get the CFTC to let them to really do anything, to create markets about non-traditional, like weather contracts and interest rate cuts, stuff like that, and elections.
Wait, so precisely what kind of prediction markets are allowed in the US?
Well, those.
Or conversely, which ones are explicitly banned?
Well, there's two ways in which they are explicitly allowed. They would be explicitly allowed by the CFTC as a traded contract, and Kalshi is, I think, the only platform that I know allows those things to be traded. Although I think if the CFTC accepts it for them, I assume other platforms could allow it. I haven't checked them recently, but it's a lot of things like interest rate decisions, things like that.
Sure.
Certainly not elections.
But elections and sports are these two are banned in the US.
So sports betting is allowed within the state. And then the gaming regulator within that state decides what you can bet on, including like
casinos, right?
Yes, casinos.
Yeah, including like if you wanted to take betting on League of Legends, say, you do have to go to the regulator and say, we want to take betting on League of Legends, and they'll approve that or otherwise. So they have a different, say, the UK. So basically, the regulator in New Jersey and in New York will have to approve every type of betting, every sport that you take bets on. In the UK, the framework is you can take betting whatever you want. Like it literally, you can take betting on anything. Like Paddy Power is famous for taking bets on the next pope, and maybe even some markets that are maybe not in such good taste, mostly as promotional. But there isn't a restriction to say, no, you have to go to the regulator before you can take bets on this.
Yeah. The reason why I'm asking is because like how I got into crypto. I told this story a few times. I got into crypto. You probably don't know, but I got into Bitcoin because back in 2012-ish, I used to do arbitrage between the sports betting exchanges. And I noticed that at least back in the day, most of them were offshore. At least the big ones were offshore.
Yeah.
And maybe the reason is because the US is kind of antagonistic towards.
Well, back then there was the only books were in Nevada, and none of them were online. So if you wanted to bet on sports, then your only option is to go offline.
Yeah. Or
go offshore.
Exactly. So I mean, how the story went was I wired my entire net worth to the offshore sports betting exchanges, including Betfair, Bet365, Pinnacle, and others. Yeah, the OG ones. And then one time, my money just got frozen by the U.S. banking system for half a year, and at that moment I realized, holy shit, I need to get Bitcoin. Yeah, and so the moment I got my money back, I just YOLO'd into this like random bank in Japan, which is the bank behind Mt. Gox. Right. Anyway, that was the story. But
that's a rich pipeline. So there is so many people who've got into crypto from poker or betting offshore because it solves a problem for them. They were like, I want to play poker and the only way I can get money in is via Bitcoin. Yeah. And so they bought Bitcoin and that got them into crypto.
So what I'm trying to get at is, you mentioned earlier that conceptually Polymarket is the same as like those sports betting, traditional betting exchanges. But obviously, Polymarket supports crypto, and I think it only accepts crypto.
That's right. Yes, it does.
Not fiat, not credit card.
Right. Yeah.
How much of their success has to do with the crypto element?
I think crypto is a huge one because I sort of mentioned before, payments is just a huge issue in the gaming market, onshore and offshore. Even FanDuel, which is onshore, regulated, spends a huge amount of money in order to like accept credit cards and dealing with credit card fraud and dealing with chargebacks, things like that. Offshore, it's even worse. There's plenty of operators who are like, hey, we'd love to operate in Latin America, but we literally can't get money in and out. And so that's why sportsbooks and casinos have really embraced crypto because they can get money in and out. If we look at...
can you explain chargeback?
Oh, chargeback. So that's where we used to, in the industry, it's sometimes called friendly fraud. So friendly fraud is whenever user comes along, wants to go bet on the next, places the bet, after the event realizes that was a really bad idea, as is often the case, and then goes to a credit card company and say, well, I didn't, that wasn't me. Somebody must have stolen my card. And so then what happens is the credit card company goes to the sports book and says, you're not getting that money. That's a chargeback. And so suddenly you're like, you basically have lost, hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands, in some cases, millions of dollars through these chargebacks.
This is actually a big issue in Web 2 as well.
Yes, yeah, huge.
Huge. Funny enough, yesterday or 2 days ago, I saw a tweet about a designer, and he was talking about how he got charged back for all the work. You saw that tweet yet? And he was really upset. So this is what I feel like this is also a pain point that crypto solves.
It's a huge pain point. And so
what percentage of the total revenue of a sportsbook do you think is ultimately spent on chargeback?
Well, so I don't have that number. I do have FanDuel reported in Q1 this year that 12.5% of its revenue, its GGR, went into dealing with payments.
Wow.
And so that's everything from credit card fees, chargebacks, fraud, all of those things.
Wow.
And that's a regulated onshore book.
Even for on-ramps like MoonPay and others.
Yeah.
I think the rate was like 50-60% chargebacks for credit card purchases, for crypto purchases.
Yeah.
So now like apps that are like Moonshot and others, they're just saying we're not going to allow credit card payments. It's just not worth it.
It's hugely problematic. And the credit card companies put it on the merchant to say, well, you're not getting this. You have to prove that they use this, which whenever it's a transaction over the internet can be really hard, right? And so it's just when somebody's buying a digital good, and so you're the one bearing the pain as the merchant. And the credit cards have no interest in solving it because they have a monopoly.
And customers are always right.
Yeah.
This is actually the biggest insight I learned this week. So I learned about Stake.com, which is an online casino.
Yeah.
So instead of election markets, they do blackjack and other traditional casino games.
Yeah, I know them very well.
And they, you know them.
Yeah.
They accept crypto payment and only crypto payment.
That's
they
right.
don't accept credit card, and that is key to their success because apparently they can save you mentioned 10% for FanDuel,
12%,
for them, 12%, but for them it's like maybe even higher.
Way higher.
It's like something like 20, 30, maybe up to 40%.
Yes.
And so ultimately, by using crypto and only using crypto, they save 40% of the expenses.
Yeah.
And they can use that for CAC, for user acquisition.
Here's a company that launched in 2017. The product's good. It is good, and then their originals, their crash games are really state of the art, and they're innovators. They didn't report last year's revenues, but but 2 years ago they did $3 billion in revenue, not handle in revenue. Staked it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, when did this start? How old is the company?
2017.
And did you know Stake also owns Kick.com?
Well, that's right. Yeah. The founders, and there's a
founders.
backstory to that. What happened was one of Stake's primary acquisition channels was Twitch. So you had streamers playing slots on Twitch, and Twitch, which basically decided that they didn't want streamers promoting real money gambling products, so they kicked them off. So to which what Stake said is like, okay, we'll set up our own. And so the founders set up a separate company, Kick, and then they bought a bunch of the streamers to come and stream on Kick off Twitch. And so they obviously, and one of their biggest verticals is real money gambling.
So it started in 2020. And they're like one of the fastest growing streaming products out there.
Yeah.
It's insane, their growth.
And their differentiation from Twitch is
terms of service.
Yeah.
Like you could be more open.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that Adam Ross says, like it's insane.
Yeah.
Like
so are they like the 4chan of streaming, or?
I wouldn't say.
I don't think I would say that. They're definitely more. They're more
degen.
Yeah, but they've definitely been more They've also gone out and bought streamers and said, right, we'll give you like like some of the bigger names have moved over from Twitch to Kick.
Did you see the stream yesterday on Pump?
I read about it. I didn't see it.
Which one?
So there was a guy on Pump.fun, because Pump.fun has streaming now.
Yeah.
And there's a guy that was streaming. I mean, I don't know how deep I want to get into this. But essentially he was like, he was with a girl, he was doing drugs.
Live.
And he was like I don't want to get into the details.
No, go into the details.
All right, he was eating her ass. and like whatever, right? And but it got up to almost 6,000 views. Like people, 6,000 people streamed it and watched it. And so like when you talk about degen,
do you have a ticker? We have to like.
It has a ticker. It's called STD.
How high did the token go?
It went up to like 750K market cap.
Wow.
Oh, so it hit Radium.
It hit Radium, went to 750K market cap.
Wow.
He was doing drugs. He was like doing flips. He shaved his head.
Live.
But it's interesting that you mentioned that because I feel like, you know, like if Pump is degeneracy, then like I'd say the level on top would be like maybe 2 levels on top is like Kick.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
In terms of relative degeneracy, like
exactly.
it's not even that degenerate.
Yeah, exactly. So I say Pump has is complete degeneracy.
Yeah.
Then like Kick.com is okay.
Yeah.
And
then you have all the
Twitch.
Then you have Twitch. Then you have
TikTok.
YouTube. Yeah. So I feel like there's a whole vertical that hasn't been filled yet for degeneracy, and we're just starting to see it.
I'm not sure I want to see that.
I don't want to see it either, but there's a market for it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, people will say, like, well, you know, Pump and Kick is enabling this. I'm like, really, it's just a reflection of the human population.
Of the internet.
I mean, the people's already. I mean, this is going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
And so it's
the problem is people.
The problem is always people.
Yeah, the problem is people. Like you build a platform and then they totally misuse it.
Yeah.
Like that's how I always sort of thought the criticism was funny of Solana, which was like people are misusing this, you know, technology, and I'm like, people are going to be people. Like it's like you build the technology, and you know, I'm actually a huge fan of meme coins. I don't take them too seriously. I don't think they're the future of finance, but I think they're really popular. And as somebody who's a consumer entrepreneur, popularity is really important. This is the most important thing. And I'm always interested in what people, you know, gravitate towards. I don't think it's just financial returns. I think that's obviously a huge part of it. You take that away and it's kind of very boring. But I think there's more to it. I think they're really interesting. And that's one of the things I think Pump is fascinating. One of the things I think is interesting is everyone's going, oh, their returns are so bad, you know, like people are going to stop using it. And I'm like, Las Vegas is a city built in the desert of people, you know, that over 60 years or, you know, 70 years, we somehow have not learned. Like we still go there, and it's because we go there because we're not homo economicus that, you know, will only do stuff if we get a positive return. Sometimes returns are measured in fun. And I think that's what they're delivering on.
I was watching a funny TikTok video of a guy interviewing an older lady, and she was playing a slot machine. And he's like, "How much have you lost so far?" She goes, "Over the past 7 years, I've lost $4 million." And he goes, "Aren't you losing money? Like, do you have any more money to gamble? Like, why do you gamble?" She goes, I love it." And then she proceeds to play the slot machine and ignores the guy. So there's this intensity. There's this, like, I'm not a gambler, but like...
You are a gambler.
Well, degen coins, right? Like for fun.
That's different.
Yes.
You know, like for fun, but I don't like YOLO.
Well, I think there's definitely two types of gambler that I sort of connect with. There's the type of gambler who, and they do overlap. There's one type which is like a slots player who plays EV negative games, games that, you know, over the long run or even the short run, you're expected to lose.
What are the odds, by the way, for these slot machines?
Well, it depends. So, like, let's go to the extreme. Lotteries, terrible bet. Like, you know, it can be as bad as 80% rake. So for every $1 you bet, you get 20 cents back. Right. Typically more like a 50% rake, but really bad. Right.
It's regulated in the markets. It's like 60-40, right?
It depends on the state.
Okay.
So it sort of varies. And then you get rollovers and stuff that'll like affect your odds. And I got a super rollover. The odds might be in your favor, but they're in your favor in the most ridiculous way, which is there's like a 1 in 14 million chance.
Yeah.
And apart from that, it's still deeply negative, right? So if you're Homo economicus, worst product ever. You go to sort of next then are things like slot machines are probably like offline slot machines can be like a 10% rake. which is pretty bad. So 10% commission, you bet $1, you win 90 cents, or even 10 to 15. Online, a lot of the products actually will tell you the RTP, return to player. And typically they will be 93 to 95.
How true is that though? Like, I mean, you see that numbers.
They are true. No, offline, they're sometimes regulated by the gaming commission, but they're within ranges. Online, like it's pretty legit. So there's the way that nearly every online casino works is there third-party providers, Pragmatic, Evolution, and they're the ones who build the games and run the games. It matters to them that these things are legit. Now, some of the operators might not be super legit. So like it's on, Joe Schmo Casino.xyu, but they have no control over the actual odds of the game. So we might not know who they are, but the actual game, if you're playing on a Pragmatic or an Evolution, they're pretty much straight down the middle. There's no incentive. A lot of those are public companies, but there's no incentive for them. Like, if you ever watch greatest movie about the casino business, Casino.
Oh yeah,
yeah, right. Yeah. So there's a scene in where it's like they talk Joe Pesci. They talk about it. Just keep, you keep the odds, you keep it straight, and you keep them at the table. And that's actually, so when people worried about getting scammed in the casino, you're not getting scammed. Nearly 99.99% of the time, the job of the casino is to keep you at the table. The odds themselves are either regulated or in online casinos, there really are third parties who like keep it at those odds. So those are, and the point of the casino, what they are trying to do is to try and keep you at the table. Right. So those about 90, so say 94, 96. Crash games blackjack is probably the best table game to play. If you play basic strategy, depending on the deck, it's between the margins between 0.5% and 1.5%. And then if you can card count, you can actually reverse it and it can be positive.
Like blackjack is the only game you can actually make money if you know how to play, right? Or
that's correct. Yes, blackjack is outside of poker, which is not as a
poker is zero sum game though.
PvP game. Yeah. So against the casino, blackjack is pretty much the only game. Sometimes you hear some people have with roulette that find imperfections. Sometimes that has happened, or there's stories about even online roulette where the table was on a carpet, and the croupier tilted the table ever so slightly, which created a higher probability that it would fall in a certain area. So you sometimes hear stories like that, but largely blackjack's the only game that's beatable.
Yeah.
But very difficult to beat.
Yeah, you got to count the cards, and it takes a lot of skill.
And then online, I'll just sort of cover the other ones. Online, casino, so return to player, is sort of 93 to 96. Crash games are really good. They're only...
What are crash games?
Oh, crash games are like, there's a whole category of them. So they are like Plinko. So if you go onto like stake.com, they're like Plinko, they are like Mines. The one game which is called Crash, which is like the rocket ship that takes off and you have to bet on it and you have to get out before it crashes. That's where it gives the whole name of the category. They're all about a 1% rake. And then
it's like a Ponzi. You want to get out before the Ponzi collapses. Is that
yes, it's kind of like, that's kind of. We actually with BetHog, which is my company, we've actually created a version.
This is the latest company.
This is the latest company I'm starting at the moment. A version of Crash, which is each rocket is actually a meme coin, and it takes off and it follows this random walk, and it will hit an all-time high and crash at a certain point. If you get out before that point, then you get that return, and it will crash somewhere between 1x and 1,000x. And the return to player on that game is 99%. So it's probably better than Pump, right? So I don't know. I actually was quite interested to figure out what the margin was in Pump. It's very hard to figure it out, but in this game, return to player is 99%.
But isn't Pump just the transaction fee?
No. Well,
and the graduation fee.
Oh, the graduation.
Like, it's more like what is the
Radium,
more of the what is the return to player as a as someone who goes in to buy the coin, not as a dev. Like what is that return to player? And that I haven't been able to figure out.
Because they snipe and
yeah, like there's like if you just went in and bought. if you went in and bought every coin, what would your return be?
Yeah.
Like maybe you hit a daddy and a mother and a Mishi, or like what if you bought everything? I suspect it's not great.
For something like Trump versus Harris, what is the rake?
Actually, good question.
Is it on the order of 1% or 5%?
I don't know what Polymarket charges.
Okay, but typically in those.
Betfair Betfair charges a gradated fee from 2 to 5% of net win on the market. So what does that mean? It means that I could trade like $1 million on that market, but if I win $1,000, I only pay $50. Like if I only net win 1,000, I pay $50. Right, so I pay 5%. Most exchanges you pay like a per transaction. But for these markets where they want to incentivize people to trade, you charge on net win. Yeah, so I don't know what Polymarket. Oftentimes a lot of these markets, because they want to incentivize volume, they go the other way, which is they will actually pay you to trade on it. It will generate huge volumes. At a later point, when they have the huge volume, they kind of flip the switch, and so then they're tracked. They're tracked. Yeah, and you kind of see it in some of the like Binance, FTX had it, which is if you were a market maker, you're actually being paid to market make. If you're a maker,
if you're a maker, maker fees.
So on those like popular markets like Trump versus Harris, there's many different books, rather as Betfair and Market and Predicted. Who are the market makers behind those? Because Betfair you mentioned is a club.
Yeah.
Polymarket is, I think they started off as
MM and then they switched.
And on top of it.
Yeah.
So now they're a club, right?
They're a club.
Okay. Yeah. So like who are the market makers here? They're mysterious people who live in the shadows.
Do you know them?
Market makers? I do know a lot of market makers.
Are they professional market makers, or are they like let's say
both?
Both. Okay, so got it.
There's professional all the way down to semi-professional, down
like
to amateur.
NFTs.
Yeah, like it's like there's the whole spectrum.
But is it like in terms of profitability? Is it like maybe a handful that controls most of the volume, or is it like fairly distributed?
It's a power law, and that you have a small number of people that are responsible for an absolute ton. Yeah. It's not as attractive for a lot of the classic market makers because the volume is just not there. Even at like,
so you're saying like for Jump, it's not attractive.
Yeah, like even for like half a billion traded,
600 million volumes.
Like that's like they're like look at the forex markets, or even look at some of the crypto traded markets. Yeah. It's kind of, I'd say for them it's sort of academically interesting, but it's just the volumes aren't nearly as big as what they could trade elsewhere.
Yeah, because what like Polymarket does like 10 million a day.
I had looked at it, something like that.
In the grand scheme of things, like Jupiter does $1 billion a day.
It's
off by 2 orders of magnitude.
Yeah, it's popularity as an information site far outweighs its sort of trading popularity.
Yeah.
Like so many more people know Polymarket over Jupiter, but Jupiter will do way, way, way more volume.
Do you think for election market, so back to the, there's two types of players, there's the EV minus and then there's the EV positive. Do you think for a market like Trump and Harris, are there players who are actually EV positive?
Well, I am to date.
You are?
Yeah. The only things that I've bet on in that market, I bet on Biden dropping out because and like immediately after the first debate, there was in my mind it was a certainty. I just was like, there is no way they can drag this to the November 5th. Like it felt to me that like the only person who didn't know was Biden, but everyone else was like going through the process of deciding that he's done.
Yeah.
I could have been wrong, but I just thought the odds were really good. So I made money on that. I'm trying to think. I shorted Michelle Obama because I just thought that was ridiculous. Yeah. That was an easy one.
Why? What's the rationale?
Because I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was like I never for a moment like she's never been a obviously she's been married to a former very...
Qiao has Obama tokens, that's why.
What's that?
Qiao has Obama tokens.
But Obama is Barack.
No, it's Michelle.
It's Michelle?
Really?
Yeah.
So I just sort of thought it was ridiculous. I just could not put through my head how the sequence of events would happen, that she would become the nominee, everyone would rally behind her, and she would get voted in. I'm like, this country may be crazy, but I just didn't see that ever happening. and so I shorted that one. But then since then, I've not touched it because I'm like, I don't really have any. I think 50-50 is probably a pretty good. I don't really have a strong opinion. I bet in the 2020 election on Biden, and put quite a lot on it. And that was, I won on that. I've lost on lots of other stuff.
What odds did you get in 2020? And what was the rationale for betting? Was it like 50-50 or?
I can't remember the odd. He was odds on, but not, in my view, odds on enough. So like he would be over 50%. I don't know, he was 60 or something more. But in retrospect, I think his odds were probably reasonably fair. Like he was much closer than I thought. I felt in 2020 people were overreacting to 2016. I think they were like, people were like, oh my God, the polls were wrong 4 years ago. They're going to be wrong this time. Yeah. And I think they gave Trump too much. I thought the market was out of line in 2020, which is why I bet against him. Where I look at it today, like, if anything, I'm not betting on the market, but I would say that I think Trump has a little bit to gain. I could see RFK dropping out.
By the way, Trump just overtook Kamala.
Okay, right. I sort of saw him trending.
Yeah.
But who do I think would win? I don't know.
It's too hard to tell.
I honestly just think that there's, the polls are generally pretty accurate. There's definitely margins, and it comes down to like 5 states. Yeah. And so
Georgia is one of them.
Yeah, and I just don't
make sure you vote.
I just don't have a strong view. And I try to be dispassionate. Like I know one candidate's dramatically better for crypto, and so that's the most important thing for me. But I just don't have a strong view now on what will happen. I know what I'd like to happen.
Yeah.
I'd actually quite like both candidates to be pro crypto, and so we could argue about other things. But like if one party basically stakes itself in trying to destroy, people, entrepreneurs, careers.
So Harris released their policy, like a very comprehensive policy yesterday, and there's zero mention of crypto.
Yes,
I thought they had a whole section about AI too.
There's a whole section about AI. And Adam Cochran wrote how it's good, blah blah blah. But what do you make of it?
Here my bull case was maybe this is showing that there is at least disagreement within the Democrats on what their position on crypto should be. So that's my bull case, right?
But can you make a case? Can you steelman that the Kamala Harris just doesn't care enough about crypto, and therefore she doesn't mention anything about crypto?
Wait, but Gary Gensler, I don't know if that's true or not, but he was supposed to be.
I don't think that was true.
Okay,
that
might have been a rumor. Yeah,
that was a rumor, and I think sourced from a Republican senator. So I didn't put. I thought that was amusing. It freaked everybody out for like 12 hours.
Yeah.
I think I don't think she's doctrinarian on it. She's not like Elizabeth Warren on it. Is my personal view. Here's my view on politicians. And so, with FanDuel, and the industry went into crisis 2015, 2016. Very like crypto, all of these states, all of these politicians wanted to close us down. And we went out and we changed the laws in 22 states. So this is fantasy sports. Fantasy sports is a state issue. It's nothing to do with the federal government, so we didn't have to lobby much in DC. It was more lobbying at a state level. What we discovered was, and this makes me kind of bullish on politics in a way, which is unusual, like bullish on legislative change, in that if you can get a topic that both is popular for voters and industry, then you can get laws changed, right? Like you can get something, because you can go to a politician and you say, I'm going to give you something. I want you to change put some legislation through that is going to get you votes and money, right? Because we as the industry are going to give you money. You're going to tax us. We're going to pay you. That legislation can get done, and we got that's why we get 22 states to change their laws within 2 years, which is like really exceptional.
Can you explain what exactly changed? What was the crisis?
So prior to that, FanDuel Fantasy Sports.
And can you talk about how big FanDuel was?
So today FanDuel is a huge company, like $6 billion in revenue this year. We started in 2009. We pivoted from the prediction market,
which is Betfair.
No.
That was the other one.
That was
HubDub.
HubDub was our prediction market. We pivoted, became FanDuel in 2009. In 2015, there became this massive, basically, there was this sort of like New York Times generated scandal of insider trading. It became this headline news story. And basically all of these AGs wanted to shut us down and say, this is...
Insider trading in which market?
Insider trading on FanDuel and DraftKings.
So what, like elections or
no, in fantasy sports that someone in DraftKings was using inside information to trade on FanDuel. It was 90% of it was a bogus story. Like there was an employee of DraftKings that did play on FanDuel, played fantasy sports on FanDuel, and did come second in a competition.
What's the insider trading on?
The theory was that he had access to information on DraftKings that would give him an unfair advantage on FanDuel.
Huh.
It was kind of bogus. Like it was nearly all bogus. Like in theory, maybe it was, but in reality, like it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that didn't matter. In the kind of heat of the moment, everybody got way too excited. And the New York Times, like, who basically had a hard-on, wanted to kill. Sport.
Sounds like crypto.
It sounds like crypto, right? So they basically, right? So they basically wanted to kill these companies, and there was, one particular journalist like leapt on this and made it a headline story, and so what happened then was we saw the snowball effect around the country where all these AGs were like, we got to shut these guys down. So
AGs,
attorney generals, So Schneiderman in New York, and then a bunch of other AGs, Illinois, Texas, and a bunch of other states. We then had this existential crisis. Is like, what do we do? And we fought it. So in New York, we fought it. We took the AG to court, and we said, we're not legal gambling. And in other states, we did the same. At the same time, we basically worked with legislators and said, your AG is ready to shut down fantasy sports in your state. We need to have laws here that clarify that fantasy sports is legal and it's a game that's loved by millions of people, and we will support it and we'll even pay taxes. All we want is some guardrails and and we want us to, if there's bad actors in this industry, we don't want them operating. And so let's put in some legislation. And this is what we did, right? And we went around. And here's the funny thing. We worked with Democrats in New York, and we worked with Republicans in I'm trying to remember, Virginia was one of the first states where it was Democrats there. It was Democrats in New York. We worked with Democrats and Republicans in California. We got through the Senate, and it didn't actually go all the way through. But we worked with Republicans in plenty of states. We worked with Democrats in plenty of states, because here's the thing. We said to them, here's something that's really popular. You will get votes, and the industry will pay you money, right? So
industry meaning like just
the operators.
Operators.
We will, we give Cambrian contributions, right? And we also will, like in New York, taxation for fantasy sports and now sports betting goes to the state, which goes to education. Just to give you an idea, in New York, this is...
I can see a crypto product here.
In the summer of 2016, and New York was one of our most important states, and the state that, if we lost, it could have killed the companies. We were in the 11th hour, we're in Albany, we're lobbying, we're trying to get this bill through. We get it through the lower house, which is controlled by the Democrats. We get it through, and so it has to go through the Senate. We'd already had a discussion with the governor and he had sort of indicated that he would sign it, because it has to get through the House, get to the Senate, get to the governor. We're in front of the Senate. The Senate's actually controlled by the Republicans in New York. And we're stuck in the Senate. And certain people were not going to vote for it. And what happened in the 11th hour is they went back to their, to phone up their constituency offices, and they were like, our phones are ringing off the hook because people want to play fantasy sports. And so like suddenly we had basically emailed all our users and said, you're going to lose fantasy sports in New York. And what happened was they were like, shit, I don't know, I don't play fantasy sport. I didn't know this was this popular. And that's what got the legislation through.
It's like us calling our senators about crypto bills.
Right.
Like,
and that's
so many parallels.
But it's exactly the same. Crypto is this kind of, and this is the thing, is ideally it shouldn't be partisan, but we should be willing to vote for the politician who's willing to like embrace it and punish the ones that aren't, because that's the way you get the legislation that you want.
Yeah.
So like with tons of and the fantasy sports experience it's almost exactly the same. Although with crypto it'll play out more at the federal level than it will at the state level.
So stay on the topic of fantasy, tangential to fantasy sports. You tweeted about Fantasy.top.
Yeah.
So basically, which is basically fantasy sports for Twitter influencers.
Yeah.
What is your view? Dispassionate, objective view of Fantasy.top and suggestions maybe for the founders.
Yeah, I thought it was a really cool product. I love consumer products and I love using them. And I love how entrepreneurs come up with new ways of testing certain things. I thought Fantasy.top was a really interesting innovation in that it made heroes out of the people who just tweet all day on Twitter, which is a cool thing. That's quite cool because they love talking about themselves and they love promoting themselves. And so you've got a natural distribution. Like one of the problems a lot of consumer products is like, how do you get people to hear about it? They sort of cracked that because they have these people as heroes. I thought the Blast ecosystem was really interesting because you had all this money that you could get people to come on board and get onto the product. The challenge I felt with the product, there was twofold, and one could be fundamental. The first problem I had with it was that there was a black box. How do I handicap? How do I put together a team? It was like, it's kind of like traditional fantasy, only I don't tell you the rules. Like
you mean like the player stats?
Yeah, the player stats.
Okay.
Like, why did Franklin is bored? Like, should I be picking him or should I pick somebody who drops like 2 bangers a day, or should I have somebody who drops out 100? That do, it was impossible at that point.
When you first launch, right?
Yeah, when it first launched. I think it's clear.
But now it's much more clear.
Now it's clear.
Yeah.
So that was my...
but with traditional fantasy sports, the rules are also opaque?
No, they're totally, totally
okay,
clear.
you know exactly
Touchdown is worth 6 points. At the start it was a little like, you pick your players and at the end of which they go, and you won. You watch the game, but you don't know, you're cheering for the guy, but you don't know if that tweet or that touchdown, how many points that scored for you. So that was my first issue. The second challenge I think they have, which is more fundamental, and is that people watch sports organically anyhow, and they track the score, and so they already have a viewpoint on how many touchdowns that quarterback might score, and they're watching that game. With one of the challenges, the more fundamental problem for Fantasy.top is, even though I follow this guy, I might have no idea. I have no idea whether, like, how is he performing relative to other people.
Wait, you mean like a player rank?
Yeah, if I were to choose, I don't know, Pac-Man versus Franklin versus Clemente or War Daddy, like how do I, I don't really know how they're performing. And I don't normally track that as a consumer.
Well, I mean, they have it on their app.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't organically normally track that, you see.
Oh, so you don't, so you're saying, how do you track players?
More as a consumer of Twitter, and I'm on Twitter a lot.
Oh, okay.
I don't really, those are not stats that I'm...
Yeah, but if you use the app, then you could see
then I could look at it.
Yeah.
It's sort of more inorganic, right? You're asking me to go and do something.
Well, I guess if you're playing the game.
If you're playing the game.
Then you have
have those stats.
Right.
But that's my point is, with sports...
Yeah, it's more...
I'm seeing it. Like, I'm naturally watching sports.
You're a sports... Yeah.
Reasons.
Okay, I see.
And so that's why fantasy works really well, which is I'm watching these sports anyhow, and I'm watching these statistics, and I'm seeing them, whereas fantasy has created statistics around something I'm involved in, but I'm not necessarily tracking.
The way I would argue, like counter argument would be, it's like if you're in the trenches of crypto and you see the tweets and you see the bangers they make, then they'll more likely buy your your card.
Right, but
because
I don't.
You're in the timeline.
Yeah, but I like even though I live on Twitter and I follow a lot of these people, I would struggle to know who's performing better than someone else.
Yes.
Like, I absolutely
right. Like,
no idea.
well, you have more data, right, with sports.
Yeah.
You could see the teams that won.
Well, one of the great things,
past performances, stuff like that. So yes, I do agree from that perspective.
That I think is one of their biggest challenges. So, for example, on a previous product that I worked on and we launched 2 years ago, we launched a fantasy record label product, which was the idea where.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
Yeah. And it was fun. The challenge that we discovered. So we basically let you buy an NFT vault, from an artist, and then you would enter that into a roster, and we would score you based on how that artist performed on Spotify over the next week. Right. The problem was no one tracked these stats, and so a couple of people got super DJing and then started tracking the stats. But the more mass market, even if they like those artists. Like, even if I gave you Taylor Swift and took the biggest Taylor Swift fan, they probably have no idea how she's performing, how many streams she's had in the last week or is going to have in the next week. And so that's one of the challenges. With sports, these stats are kind of front and center, whereas outside of sports, they're not as easily, people just don't track them as much. And that's the challenge of creating fantasy around other things, which is you have to really have stats that like a lot of people kind of care about and are interested in.
Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is, so Friendtech, if you remember, they had the boom and bust, right?
Yeah.
And I think what went wrong with Friendtech was the fact that the founder wasn't proactive with user feedback. One of the issues. There's many.
Yeah, there's many.
But like I would say the first one would be like founder feedback, right? Like everyone gave him feedback like about key pricing and different bonding curves.
Yeah.
Like he could have fixed that.
And I think that's true. I actually wonder if there was a more fundamental problem with Friendtech. So I was actually on BitCloud in 2021.
Yeah, same.
I spent a lot of time on BitCloud, and I was fascinated. And Friendtech, I actually thought was a really nice evolution on it because BitCloud didn't really give you a reason to own the key apart from pure speculation. Friendtech did. The problem I wonder about Friendtech is and I think it kind of comes down to the bonding curve, which is if you have a sharp bonding curve, it makes it a great casino and a very bad product. Because who wants to buy, like the 200 key, which is like $5,000?
And you're forced to perform at that level.
Right,
And there's no way, like, what do you want? Like, there's no way you could perform at that level.
So, but it's a good casino.
It's a great casino.
Like, it's great. If I can get in early, I can get this. If you flatten the bonding curve, you make it a bad casino because it's like, if you buy early, then you could maybe get like a 5% or 10 or 20%.
Then it's really about
and then it's about how good a chat group is it. And I just don't. I actually think that like for OnlyFans girls, OnlyFans is better because the idea of giving because a key became lifetime supply.
Yeah.
Like if I buy the key and I get into the group, I get lifetime supply of this creator, which doesn't really work for the creator because they've just sold it too cheaply. And that was, and the OnlyFans girls on Friendtech seemed to last like a weekend.
Well,
they were like, wait a second, that doesn't.
Yeah, Jenny was one of them.
Jenny, I remember.
It doesn't work.
There was also incompatibility of users.
Culture.
Right, yeah.
The culture was a very big problem.
She hated crypto.
Yeah, okay.
Crypto hated gaming.
But I just don't think the product worked well. And so I did think Friendtech was an evolution from BitCloud, but I still am like...
I think the bonding curve, he could have fixed the messaging.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues.
Yeah.
So like Qiao and I were top 5 farmers, right? Mm-hmm. So we farmed it pretty well.
Yeah.
But I got a lot of feedback. I gave a lot of feedback to Racer through an Anon group.
Yeah.
He didn't take it.
Yeah, I know. That was the other problem. Right?
And so had he taken it and started to iterate, I think we would have been in a very different...
I still feel like Friendtech is only a few iterations away from real product market.
Yes.
Just... I don't know what the perfect configuration is, but it feels so close.
It's so close.
But whether it's
Friendtech
them,
V1, not V2.
Whether it's them or somebody else that does, it's an open question. Like
that's also true. I think racers burn the community enough.
Yeah.
But like the original point I was getting to was like, okay, so Friendtech had this boom and bust, and they took feedback. He didn't take feedback, and then it just went down only.
Yeah.
Then there was this gamble, like, okay, the points would reinstate a new app, V2, and that was the hope, and it didn't work out the way it did. And it just imploded. Now,
called the pickle top, by the way.
Yes. On the contrary, Fantasy.top, I feel like is less speculative.
Yep.
And it's more about the game and game logic.
Yeah.
And in fact, like you could argue that, after 7 months, there's a very strong core group of users. I'm still getting messages every single day about people tweeting. I still play the game every tournament.
Yeah.
I was talking to Jason Yanowitz earlier. He was like, "Man, people still tweeting at me. It's crazy. It's working."
There isn't magic.
What I'm arguing is that there's also magic in that core group of users. And Friendtech could have had it if they just listened to the customers. And that's what Fantasy.top is doing well, I think.
No, so I probably led in with the issues with it.
No.
But you're right. I actually think they've executed really well. Like consumer's hard, right?
It's very hard.
It's really hard. And they absolutely at launch caught lightning in a bottle. In crypto, it's totally normal that you drop by 90% and then some come out of the chasm.
Yes.
And I actually think that they're one that could, because they actually have a listening community, they've iterated the product. And at its core, it's a fun product. Like fantasy is a fun product.
Generally, fantasy is fun. Yeah. I just if it wasn't for fantasy, I would like my followers.
Tweet less. You would tweet less.
I would tweet less. I don't even tweet. And Qiao would always bug me to tweet. I just don't. But now I have like 25 people tweeting at me every day to tweet more. And I get very stressed out and I tweet for them.
Yeah.
So I guess like pivoting to topics, I feel like prediction markets, Qiao and I see a ton of prediction markets.
Yeah.
It's becoming the next game.
Yeah.
You've seen prediction markets year in, year out.
Yeah. Well, every 4 years.
Every 4 years, right. The first question I'm going to ask is, what types of prediction markets are we going to see now? Like, is it Polymarket's going to win? Is it winner takes all? Is it winner takes all for 4 years and somebody else comes in? Like how do you see this evolve?
Here's my prediction, and the first thing to caveat is I think Polymarket done an incredible job. Huge respect for what they've done. I think it's really smooth onboarding, great interface. Their marketing has been fantastic. I think come November 6th, we're going to see a very rapid drop-off of interest. Because I know a lot of people are saying, well, look at the non-political market, look at the non-election markets. Those non-election markets are driven by election volume. Like you have this, unprecedented like eyeballs on Polymarket. And then some of those users are going in, they're betting on the election, but they're also like betting on some of these other markets. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. So the election market stuff obviously drops by like probably 100%. Maybe I'm not sure if there's like by-elections or something, but like it's, next year that's going to drop by at least 95%. But I also think that the non-election stuff is going to drop by probably 80%. Because so much is driven by the volume.
80%.
Yeah, I think it's going to see a massive drop. Yeah, but that's just because there's so much attention on it today.
Yeah, well, they can convert those users to other markets.
And let's look at the non-election markets today. Like, how interesting are they? Like, okay, interest rate change. That's kind of interesting. But I'm not like jumping out of bed to get on that. I don't have a viewpoint on that. I'm like, okay, I can read, I can listen to the Fed. So that's kind of interesting. Like what else is there? Like what else is it? Like there's other stuff. Like somebody's going to.
I feel like it's more fun to bet on what Jerome Powell will say during the next FOMC meeting than to bet on the interest rate.
Yeah, maybe that's So some of those they're kind of niche interests and. Compared to, in places like the UK where you can take bets on anything, politics is less than 1% of the market.
Oh, so what else do they bet on?
Dog racing.
Dog racing.
Well, like horse racing.
Remember hamster racing?
Hamster racing.
How like they bet on, like what are their big markets? The biggest one is horse racing. Then it's probably soccer. Then it's like cricket, dog racing, like there's a whole list of different things. Like if you go and look at Betfair, you'll see like the list of like 30 major sports that they cover, of which politics is one. But it's not, like the problem is outside of sports, the news is not great for markets. So the news doesn't outside of sports and finance, should I say. Why is that? It's because they don't really often throw up binary outcomes. They're also too slow, right? So like what's like a binary outcome? Like I'm trying to, like if you think of a lot of the running news stories outside of elections, like I'll give you an example. We had a prediction market with HubDub. We had the governor here, Elliot Spitzer, was caught with a prostitute, and the whole question is, would he resign by X? And we were in Polymarket seeing this as well. Of course, he resigned on this date, effective 2 weeks afterwards, and so now it's straddling the end.
Yeah,
so you run
that happened with the ETF approval.
ETF approval that happened. So you start to like. But that's just one example of how messy news is. And also, most news stories don't have a nice, clean yes or no.
Because they're all nuanced.
They're all kind of
and
nuanced.
There's left, there's right. Like, one will spin it the other way. So which answer do you take?
Will the Democrats? So interesting question. Will the Democrats embrace crypto? How would I?
Yeah, what does that even mean?
What does that even mean?
Yeah.
But so many the most important questions actually are these kind of messy ones. The prediction markets just aren't good at. Like they're just not. And so I would say crypto is kind of weird, and they have this because like prediction markets mentioned in like the white paper that this is big thing. They haven't been in prediction markets for like 20 odd years, and I love prediction markets. I just don't think they're very good at kind of for most things outside of they're great for sports.
How do you solve that? Because
or maybe a different question,
resolving.
Like, what are some of the markets that could be interesting that we haven't seen yet?
I don't like we haven't run a prediction market for like 2 years. We what was our biggest in this? We were pretty agnostic of our verticals. Sports was number one, right? 70% of our volume was sports. Mm-hmm. Finance was number two. Like we used to have a market on what would the last digit of the S&P 500 be every day. So like it's
wow.
Yeah, like
that's a pure gamble.
That's a pure gamble, right?
Oh my
Would
God.
it be up or down? Like people used to love a bet on that. Then other financially interest rates hikes and stuff. Then and then politics was the next one. And then like we had markets on science and stuff like that. They were so boring. Like they were like
there was you remember that Korean paper last year? The fission,
was it room temperature
superconductor, whatever. Superconductor.
Yeah. It was a market on that. That was kind of interesting.
Yes.
But
then
that
someone someone replicated in LA or something.
No, they did.
No, they didn't.
Was that bullshit?
That was couldn't be replicated.
Couldn't be replicated.
But that was actually an interesting one. But we know about these by the exception, right? You think of all of the news stories that you followed over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
How many of them could have been markets? And outside of elections or sports or finance, very few of them because they're kind of messy and
Do you think this could be solved through resolving? So like UMA protocol, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, maybe talk about how you resolve markets previously, and then what do you think about UMA protocol and how it resolved? Because it's also very contentious, right? Because of the nuance.
Yeah.
You have a bunch of people, 60 people that vote on contentious issues. And from what I've heard, they're not very in the know as far as the different answers that they have to vote for.
Yeah.
So I'm curious on like what you think about resolving before, which was highly centralized, versus more of a governance. I don't think
it's a resolution issue because I just think that the real world is messier than.
Couldn't you like? There's also you could say that I've heard of the stories where you could probably use AI and get streams of data from all of these different.
I'm not convinced by that.
Okay,
like I'm really not. I do. One thing though I would say is. I do think Keynesian beauty contests are really interesting. So Keynesian beauty contest, you probably know obviously, is that you're not voting for or you're not betting on the prettiest girl, you're betting on who everyone else will think, right?
It's basically meme coins.
Yeah, meme coins, right? And the stock market in the short run is a Keynesian beauty contest. You're not betting on which is the best stock. You're betting on which one will other people think is the best stock in the short term. So I think those are interesting. They're not really prediction markets. Yeah. I think meme coins are examples of that. I do think we will see more iterations of Keynesian beauty contests, but I don't really think of them as prediction markets because I don't think the outcome is truth. I think it's just like, where do we think the majority will end up kind of thing is kind of more of the, I think is interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's like a binary in the future, this has happened or this hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So what do you think about UMA protocol and how it resolves?
I don't really know it very well.
Okay, so it's essentially a resolving network that will resolve via on-chain. So you'll have people that'll vote.
Right.
And so they'll come in with a decision on who's right or wrong. And if it's wrong, then there's a dispute.
Yeah.
And it goes into a dispute resolution, and there's a governance vote that'll vote whether or not.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way it works today.
And if they vote wrong, they get slashed? Is that the idea? Or
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Like
versus like how it's done before.
And are they trying to find truth, or are they trying to find what?
I believe it's truth. Yeah. And that's what Polymarket uses today.
Right, it does. And I think it's important and needed, although I definitely think there's a lot of like games that go on under the hood, know, where
how would you build a better resolution market?
Well, like if we look at it, if we go back to like the Constitution, what do we have here? We have the Supreme Court, who goes back and looks at the original documents and interprets the Constitution to say what was the original intent and that. And so I do think there's more interesting stuff there. I'm not convinced that in 3 years, I'm not even convinced in 1 year. 1 year, 2, like in 4 years, we're going to have prediction markets and we're all going to get excited about them. But in 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years, I don't think we're going to be talking about prediction markets.
Bam.
That's my, my honest take.
In
the height of the prediction market bubble, I do think it's a bubble right now because there's just maximal attention. Like, how do you go up from here? You don't.
This is the top. So
this is the top.
November 5th.
Yeah. If I can short prediction markets, show me where I can short it. I'll. And that's not a criticism of anybody who's built one. I think.
Well, you've done it for 16 years, so I mean.
Well, I've been interested in 16 years, and I've seen the market go like this and like this with absolute regularity. Like there's certain tops that. Some people recognize, economists, like they'd see that, the tulips should not be worth 1,000x what they were worth a year ago. Prediction market, there's rare that you have one that I can put a date on it. November 5th, that's when that site is going to get hammered. November 6th, well, actually, it'll probably run on for a bit because it's possible that one person may not agree with the outcome, depending on the outcome. And, it'll trundle, but by January 1st, there's just not going to be, it's not going to happen. The newspapers are not going to be writing about it. We're at the peak,
I'm going on a tangent, but you mentioned something really interesting that got me to think. The Supreme Court in the U.S. is effectively the oracle, the resolution mechanism for the U.S. Constitution, right? And in my mind, the Supreme Court or the judicial branch out of the three branches in the U.S. is the one that has not been tainted. Like it's the one that's
some people
not
would
corrupt.
argue with that, but yes, I know.
Less corrupt.
The least
corrupt. How does that happen? Isn't it?
Well, I think. How does it happen?
Like, why are they less corrupt?
Well, I think a lot of people would argue with that point. Like, the court has moved to the right over because it's a political appointee.
Right.
So I think that's, that is definitely true. It has moved to the right.
There's 5 R's and 4 D's.
I think the other thing is that the court it's less of a political role. Like, obviously, there are political appointees, but there are people who followed a career of, not being as it's not like they're politicians as such, right? And so, like, often they are being politically appointed, but they also have a kind of a tradition would have hold of impartiality. And so I think that does make a big difference of the certain of people who go into it. They're I think that's a huge driver, but it's certainly not apolitical.
So effectively, the UMA oracle, like the people who vote in the UMA system, should not be traitors.
No, they should be like
that's the.
It's like the jury, right?
Well, I think what I assume what it's trying to do, which is
they have data APIs too, so they'll
but they're trying to make it sort of more trustless, right? Like even when people act in their own self-interest, it comes. When I act in myself, everyone acts in their self-interest, it generates truth. And I think that's really interesting. And that's kind of what the Keynesian beauty contest is about, which is if I ask everyone to vote for the girl they think is prettiest, sorry that I'm using the original analogy that you should modernize it. Then, our guy, but that's not the original formatting of it. Then that's maybe less, accurate than if I get people to incentivize to vote for what they think is what everybody else thinks is true. Because if you use that in somewhere where people are partial, so for example, if I have to settle a contentious Polymarket one and I have a vested interest in Trump winning, for example, or let's use the ETF. If I have a vested interest in the ETF, then I'm going to vote that the ETF happened. But if I'm told if I do that and I'm in the minority, I'm going to get slashed, I'm going to go, ooh, that's going to cost me. And therefore, I'm more inclined to basically vote with what I think is the truth because I think the majority will vote with the truth. And so it is a nice function to do that because it causes imperfect people, which we are with vested interests, to actually vote for the truth. And I think that there's a lot of latitude, and I think that's going to be a really interesting design.
How do you scale though? But I feel like some interesting news pieces that I've seen over the past 2 weeks. Perplexity announced an integration with Polymarket. Mm-hmm. So if you search for Donald Trump or something, the Polymarket will come up with the odds of who's winning and losing. Yeah. And you could argue that maybe in the future, all the misinformation could have its own prediction market, which would then be characterized by a graph. I'm not saying that's going to happen or not, but you could imagine a world where people can put money into seeking more truth and misinformation, and AI will just use. I just don't think most. Could that be a world?
Most news is messy, and so I would point to a better thing, which is community notes on Twitter, on X. Yeah, community notes are probably one of the best developments on Twitter in the last 4 or 5 years because they absolutely and the mechanism design there is very clever. And
what's the mechanism design there?
So it basically anyone can submit them, but then there's then anyone can vote on whether it's useful or not.
So there's a committee.
There's
a committee.
I don't know if it's not in it's
I
not
thought there was a group of people.
But it's not. I didn't think that it's not like a group with an X that select.
No, it's outside of X.
Right, it's outside of X.
Yeah.
So it is. It's a mechanism design that is decentralized, but it's not. And maybe it is. To my eyes, it seems to be generally impartial. Like if there's disinformation on one side, it will get community noted. If it's on the other side, it'll also get community noted. That to me is much more interesting than prediction.
I 100% agree with
that. Right? You suddenly see that mechanism design has actually taken something that's messy and then community noted it.
Why wouldn't that group also get corrupted over time?
Well, because of it could do, but I think if you design the mechanism well, then it doesn't get corrupted.
Yeah.
Like getting the right people.
It's not. No, it shouldn't get the whole point is it shouldn't have the right people. The mechanism design should be designed so that, and I haven't actually looked into the mechanism, but in effect, that if you vote against the truth, you socially get slashed. Your reputation. And in a way, Wikipedia is a mechanism design that, again, some people think it's excuse to the left. I think it's incredibly good in that you have editors who devote their life to having the truth on there, and they get into these crazy fights over submissions. Generally, we trust Wikipedia because it has this mechanism design that, if you go spam Wikipedia, it will be off there in a flash. It's incredibly good at doing that. And it's good. And that to me is a really interesting mechanism design. It's not a prediction market. I think it's more interesting than a prediction market. Mm. Sorry to rain on the prediction market parade.
Do you remember we looked at the alternative social media, like on the Wikipedia page? The alt, what's it called? Alternative. There's a
Alt-Tech.
Alt-Tech.
Oh yeah, and then you said it was heavily left.
It was heavily left because they classified Twitter as Alt-Tech.
They did,
and their definition for Alt-Tech is, I guess, websites or platforms that skew to the right.
Right.
And they classify Twitter as right-leaning, which has been shifted that way, shifted to the right over time. over the last few years. But is it really right leaning today?
Well, that's an interesting.
Elon's really right.
Correct.
Like he's today. He was like, I'm actually at the center, and I'm like, says bullshit. Everybody, right? Like,
bullshit.
Yeah,
he posted a video of him and Trump dancing, right?
Yeah. I think that like it's an interesting one. Like, here's the question: like, is it right leaning? Like, the community note's not great on that one. Like, is it right leaning or left leaning? Like, everyone is so biased on that question. Like, what is that question? I don't even think is answerable, right? Like, because you have to figure what's the center.
Well, so the only thing you can measure is relative. Who? So, for example, Threads relative to Twitter is left. Far more left leaning than
which is why Cuban's so active on Threads.
Oh, is that right?
Oh yeah. I get it. I'm on both.
So the day Kamala Harris issued the press control stuff, so I searched for Kamala Harris on Twitter. It's filled with criticism.
Yeah.
Did the same thing on Threads. It's all praise.
Right.
It's like left to right.
Yeah. So maybe
it's all tech. Threads is all tech.
Yeah. Twitter is all tech, you mean?
Twitter's all tech too.
All tech.
Yeah.
They're all tech.
They're all tech relative to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely. And is Threads doing well? Because I dropped off whenever crypto Twitter moved off Thread, and there was a hot moment where like, wow, this is
people are still using it. I'm still on it, and I still get messages.
Right.
From last I read, they have 100 monthly active users.
100 million?
100 million.
Wow.
I mean, if you have like 1 billion on Facebook, Instagram.
I just my impression early on was like the Instagrammers came over and they're like, ooh, words, not like they were like.
Yeah, it's too. It is. Yeah, people are much more nicer.
Yeah,
I didn't like that. I'm so used to trolls.
You're used to authenticity.
Yes, authentic.
Yeah, I tried it for a hot moment.
It just made me feel weird.
Yeah, everyone being nice to each other.
That kind of gives you my political affiliation too.
I also like for any of these, like the Farcaster is another one. Like a lot of time I go for a laugh, and Farcaster just does not. It's the driest community. And Threads was a little like that as well. It's like this is like not fun.
Yeah. What do you think of Base?
Of Base, I don't know what people do on Base. Like I genuinely don't. Like I was tracking the numbers recently, and I'm like, what do you guys all do on this? Like I don't. I see it as probably being the winning L2. But I still haven't figured anything to do on it apart from
Friendtech.
Friendtech was on. Apart from Friendtech, that was the only time.
The breakout app.
Yeah.
They have like a lot of. I mean, they have a lot of builders.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen a breakout app.
Like what? Yeah.
I think they're all just testing.
Yeah.
Trying to get to product market fit.
2 meme coins, I think, and
I got screwed on all of them. So
yeah, like so that was kind of my. So I if you want to have a consumer experience on Ethereum, you need to be on an L2. I actually thought Blast was super interesting, and I think it's still interesting. And it actually, pound for pound, easily had the highest concentration of consumer apps. It was like incredible. Yeah. If I've used Arbitrum, it was by mistake. Like I just have never found a reason to go and use it.
DeFi is the only.
Arbitrum is DeFi.
Yeah, but then to do what?
Perp trading.
Oh, to do okay.
Perp trading, lending.
But then lend to do what? Perp
trading.
Yes, it's another form of
right. And I just like I'm not knocking it. To me, just as somebody who builds consumer apps and plays with consumer apps, I've just never found a reason to use it.
Yeah,
it's similar to the 100 other L2s, which is the same as if it doesn't have a consumer product on it, I wouldn't use it. That's why I thought Blast was really interesting. In Base, potentially, I obviously having Coinbase behind it is potentially interesting, but I hardly ever, since I stopped using Friendtech, I've never really used it. And I only use Polygon for Polymarket.
What is something that you really believe in or have strong conviction in that very few people agree with you on in crypto?
I think meme coins are here to stay, and I think they're, which might sound stupid, but I think they're here to stay, and I think they're a forerunner of something more interesting. In that, in consumer, one of the hardest things is to get attention. about something, and meme coins do it in spades. Like it's crazy how popular they become. Obviously, a lot of it is around speculation, but they create communities super fast. Like we launched a meme coin called Holdium.
Oh yeah, I've been following that.
Yeah, and we launched it like 2 months ago, and we airdropped 70% of supply to people who held other meme coins, and within a few weeks, we had 20,000 followers. We airdropped like 150,000 wallets.
I remember you calling out sellers. Who is this person that sold? Who is it?
We are going to burn you. Yeah. So but that's amazing. Like
okay, so you bootstrapped the community by airdropping a meme coin
to 30 other meme coin holders.
And you got 20,000 followers on Twitter.
We got 20,000 followers on Twitter, and we identified, and we had 150,000. No, let me get. I think it was 100. We're at. Oh no. Wait, we airdropped 150,000 people who had bought the Solana Mobile. We had something like 200,000 people connect their wallet, and of that, we found 50,000 that were eligible to get an airdrop for us because they held one of the other meme coins.
Like Whiff was one of them.
Yeah, Whiff and Bonk and all of the big ones. So we had 200,000 people rock up, which is amazing, and we had 50,000 of those then, had wallets that had meme coins in them and therefore eligible for the Holdium airdrop.
So the user needs to claim the airdrop and connect their wallet.
They had to connect a wallet. They had to come to Holdium.xyz.
Okay.
They had to connect a wallet. And then we looked at their wallet and said, yep, you hold Bonk, Whiff, or one of the other coins, and then we airdropped them Holdium.
What was your original insight? Like before you launched this token, what made you want to do this?
We did it because like I've always been fascinated by meme coins. We felt that the original piece was we'd actually built a technology to allow us to look into wallets and look over the entire history and identify whether somebody had bought or sold meme coins. And so we said, well, let's try and find a way to use it. And so that's why we launched a meme coin using that technology. And like it did it very efficiently, like in that, we analyzed like 250,000 wallets over the space of a couple of weeks, and then gave a score to each of them and then did the airdrop based on them. But my sort of point was, like on zero budget, we got 200,000 people to show up that checked their wallets to see whether they were eligible, and we didn't spend anything. Like there wasn't a single marketing dollar spent on this. Like people were just so excited to get the airdrop and get in early.
So if you were Pump today or another a token launchpad, would you spend any money to acquire users? Because in the past with like Betfair, etc., there's probably a lot of CAC, right?
Yeah.
But Pump spent zero money at least in the early days.
I think like whenever we look at crypto marketing outside of exchanges, like that's marketing, to Web2 to say come and buy. Almost all of it has been a complete waste, right? Like you see, was it Algorand had like a cringy ad about how it's better than Bitcoin? I don't know if you saw that.
The payments.
The
grocery
payments.
store.
And it's just like, or if you look at like, what was it? Was it Polkadot? Like had like 25 million they'd spent.
But they're irrelevant, right?
Oh, I know, sorry. But my whole point is.
Whoops! I had to cut that out.
But my whole point. My whole point about, like, tell me a crypto marketing campaign that you've seen that has inclined you to buy that product, right? A paid marketing campaign. Probably the only ones is KOLs, like pumping meme coins and then dumping. Like, those are the ones you don't actually see they're being paid. But
the centralized exchanges that do referral programs. Right,
so that's the only exception. Yeah. That's my only exception I'm saying. Those ones.
Coinbase does, yeah.
Coinbase doing marketing.
But they have a good product.
They have a good product, right. But all of these other ones
have not found product market
fit. Haven't found product market fit.
That's where we are.
Spending
but my question is, for something like Pump that has product market fit.
Right. Doesn't make sense in the market.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think so.
I don't need to.
And I don't think that's their issue. The fundamental question, if I was running Pump, and I am very glad that I am not, I think it's a great product and a really interesting product, but is what do their cohorts look like? Is their growth coming from all new users? Are users churning out?
I think their churn is very high.
Right. And then, but and what is the user experience of people coming through it? it's not that people are losing money. People lose money in gambling products all the time, and they keep coming back. Do they? Are they coming back? Are they enjoying the experience? And then the other really important one is, do they feel it's fair, right? Because there's a huge difference between somebody coming in and losing money and saying it was fun and coming back the next day. Like lottery products. I think lottery products are totally not fair.
Yeah.
But people, feel that they're fair, and they'll go and buy scratch cards and they'll go and do those things, and they think it's a fun experience to keep doing it. Like some people will go, oh, they're addicted. And that's not true. 99% of people who play these games are not addicted. They enjoy it. And that's one of the things that if I were running Pump, I would really want to understand is, are our users having a fun experience? And so are they like a lottery product in which people are enjoying it and they keep playing it? Or are they like a penny auction? Do you remember the penny auction sites? So it used to be like, you could win this iPad for $5.
Oh, yeah.
You remember the penny auction?
Yeah, they used to advertise this on all the videos. Yeah, it was annoying.
Of them. And they absolutely took off.
I did go through it.
They absolutely took off. But the problem was, they didn't deliver on their promise, right? They felt unfair because you thought you could buy an iPad for $5 when in actual fact you end up spending $100 and you still don't have an iPad, because the way it works was you buy each bid, and each bid might cost you 50 cents, and it's on a Dutch auction, so the time's down. And if you're the last bidder, you get it. If you bid, it goes up by 1 cent and the clock goes up by 30 seconds. So then somebody else bids and somebody else bids. And so basically they're collecting all this bid money, and you're like, oh my God, it's 5 seconds, I'm going to bid. But then the clock goes up and then somebody bids again. And so, yes, somebody did get it, but by that point, they've accumulated like $1,000 in bids, and you're down several $100s in bids. And it felt scammy to the user. And so they really took off. And what if you looked at their numbers was that what was taken off is they were bringing in new users and bringing in new users. Existing users were churning out because they felt it was scammy and unfair. And that's the biggest question I would be looking at if I was running Pump is my growth coming from new users that are churning out, or is it existing users continuing to play?
But you also think meme coins are a precursor to something potentially more interesting.
Yeah.
But do you know what that is? That's something more interesting?
No. So, no, I don't.
But you sense there's something more.
I do sense there's something. I think it's something around, like meme coins are incredible, like marketing devices. They're incredible at creating communities. It may be the consumer products need to have, and like one of the things maybe if you've got a consumer product, you need to have a coin around that. It is much more like a meme coin. Mm-hmm. Like let's think of an example like Jupiter. Like maybe Jupiter would be a lot better if the Jupiter meme coin was just a lot more fun to own, and and it.
I mean, Jupiter did have a.
Well, they had Wen. Yeah,
Wen. Yeah, that's right.
Wen and not Jupe.
Not the desk going.
Yeah.
But like, so maybe like if I'm a consumer, it is a consumer product, but like maybe if I was launching, and I'll give you an example. We're launching BetHog. We're going to launch the Hog token, which is which would be connected to it, and we want that token to have have a lot of be much more like a meme coin, be one that's cool to own, to have nice branding, to be part of a community, because being like this cold utility coin, I think is short-sighted if you're a consumer product.
I think the next big thing for meme coins is something that Pump is iterating on, which is streaming. Mm-hmm. It turns out 10 to 15% of all users stream on Pump 24/7.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
Say that again?
About 10 to 15% of the users
are watching a stream.
Are watching some sort of stream 24 hours a day. And so what happened yesterday, what I was talking about was the person that was doing this action with the token price, that was just a flash in the pan. And the flash in the pan is similar to like the flash in the pan with what happened with, remember CryptoKitties?
Yeah.
Right? That was like a flash in the pan. We're seeing these flash of pans, and I think this is a flash in the pan to something much bigger. And the bigger opportunity, I think, is going to be, people's like streaming and tokens and the relative price of the token per that stream. Like people, what was also interesting was that people were messaging in the group chat. And the group chat was like, hey, you know, they were saying some obscene things, but like, hey, do this action. And the guy would do it, or he would read it out like, hey, chat, should I do this? I mean, I watched his stream yesterday, so I could tell it. And I've been watching the streams over the past few weeks.
And then the guy does it. And then what?
And then the price goes up, right? Not saying it happens all the time, but there is a price. Like, so people were spamming like, do this to the girl, and he won't do it, and the price was going down. But he's like, I want the price to go up, and he was doing other things like shaving his head and stuff like that. But people wanted to see something else, and if he did something that they want, you could see a change in price.
Like I was thinking about.
So I do think I do think meme coins are gonna represent some sort of human action or want. And I think streaming is to be the enabler to that.
So when it comes to streaming, I was thinking about streaming and tipping within streaming, tipping during the live stream. It's such a prevalent behavior.
Yeah.
And you just got me to think maybe the meme coin is like the crypto native version of tipping.
Sure.
Because effectively, you know, the live streamer, let's say when they launch the coin, they own a percentage of the token. And then if they do something that the audience want them to do, the price goes up, they make money. Similarly, in traditional Web2 live streaming, they make money when they do something that the audience want them to do and then get a tip.
It's like a heat map, right, of the audience, right? So the price will dictate what they're going to do, is the way what I saw yesterday.
Yeah.
Which is a very interesting element. And so like you could also argue, I mean, like I don't want to go deeper, but that's kind of the high level.
And I think like I track Solana meme coins. Like every day I publish an update on the Solana meme coins, really as a forcing function for me to just keep an eye on them. The total market cap has actually been reasonably stable of the top 20. So this is Bonk with Popcat, Boom, which is a weird one. I don't really understand that one. Like it's got a really big market cap, but not a huge community. You know, all the way down to Wen, and at bottom of the table at the moment is like Daddy and Mother, and they're both about 40 million market cap. But the total value of the top 20, I think, has peaked at about maybe 8 or 9 billion. No, is it about 8 billion? And today it's about 6 billion. And so over the last, since around March, since I started tracking them, it's kind of gone up and down, pretty much in track with Solana. And so the interesting thing to me is like they're really persisting. It's not, and there actually is not as much volatility as you'd think within that top set. Bonk and Whiff have range traded, each between like sort of 1.5 billion and 3 billion. The other ones, there's been some movement mid-table, but you'd be surprised. Like I would say most weeks we maybe have like one new entrant and one faller. But most days it's pretty steady as a whole. Each coin can like, there's one Habibi today, which is up 45%. I have no idea why.
Fat girlfriend also.
Yeah, it's like, you know, so it's just like, you know, and then there's other ones like the Donald Trump one collapsed, you know, a few weeks ago. We know why.
RJT or whatever.
Yeah, they didn't even survive long enough to make it in my index.
Yeah.
I try and not add them until they've been around for a week or so to try and, but so it's actually fairly stable. And the other thing is, like we look at back to the previous cycle, Doge and SHIB, like they dropped a lot, but they didn't die. You know, like they didn't you know, in theory, like they should have gone to zero. Like there was, you know, interest just dissipated, but they still kind of persisted. So that's why I'm kind of like, look, at a minimum they persist, but the interesting thing is how they grow from here.
Kyle tweeted this a couple of weeks ago, Samani, and he said, you know, I don't see how Polymarket can compete with FanDuel or was the other
DraftKings.
DraftKings.
Yeah.
And he said because, you know, CAC is very high.
Yeah.
And lifetime value of each customer needs to be long enough such that they can convert into doing sizable bets.
Yeah.
And that's how they monetize.
Yeah.
Like getting people to do short-term bets versus CAC and the KYC and the compliance is so expensive such that...
Well, there's actually a more fundamental reason why they can't. compete.
So is that true? And then, is that true what he said? Because you obviously see the numbers.
Yeah.
And so let's start with that.
Well, like, there's a more fundamental reason is Polymarket don't operate in the US. FanDuel and DraftKings do.
Yeah.
So then the question is, can they compete internationally? So say, could they compete with Stake, who, they operate in the same markets? The answer is like no.
They can't.
I don't think so. They're very different markets. So I started a betting exchange like Betfair called Betdex. We started it 3 years ago. It's operational. It's a sports betting market, and all of its markets are like, nearly all of the betting is one day, like in the next, most of the betting actually is in a period of about 68 hours running up to the event. I think there's very little overlap between that user base and the Polymarket user base.
So they're going to have to go ahead.
Do you mean, why is that? Is it because the difference between sports and election?
Yeah, it's sort of like the people who are following sports, and like it's the people who are trading these in sports, and the overlap with people in trading election isn't as great as people think. Okay. So there's the people that we're interested, like, the people I know that would trade the election, like, they might drop a bet, but maybe closer to the time. They usually don't want to have a lot of money locked up for 3 months. They want to go and bet today.
So when you say Polymarket can compete with DraftKings, you mean basically...
They can't compete with them because they're not onshore. They're not in the US.
So they can do US.
And they're not going to get licensed here.
They're not?
So, no.
You don't think they're going to fight for it, or it's not worth it?
I just think it's not going to happen.
It's a monopoly. I mean, duopoly.
Well, they would... Well, like, there's two ways in which it could go. They could either go CFTC route. They might go that, but like, I don't think the CFTC would. They're certainly not showing an openness to it, and they wouldn't. It wouldn't on the state by state route. They're not going to get it. The regulators are not going to allow election.
Too much work.
Well, it's just the regulators would not allow election betting. Like, the New Jersey Gaming Commission is not going to approve it. So they're not going to compete with FanDuel and DraftKings for fundamental reasons. They just don't operate in the US.
But hold on, just to double click on. So you're saying basically the US market is so big that if they don't operate in this market, they cannot compete in volume. Is that what you're saying? Or
no. I'm just saying that they're not competing with FanDuel and DraftKings because they don't operate in the US.
Oh, okay. They're not competitors.
They're just not competitors. Okay. They're not like, it's not, there's no,
got it.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, like, if they were to then say, hey, we're going to go get a gaming license and go in, like, they have zero chance. Even operators like ESPN, right? ESPN, who've partnered with Penn, like the biggest brand in sports, they have a 2% market share, right? They are tiny. They are struggling to compete. Fanatics, which has poured hundreds of millions of dollars into it, is struggling to compete. Caesars, which is one of the biggest casino groups in the world, has a tiny market share in sports betting in the US. So,
who's the dominant player in the US?
FanDuel owns over half of the market.
So
DraftKings is number 2.
And what is the moat?
Amazing product, like amazing product that is regulatory. They are online in every state. They have market access. They have all of the compliance. They have payments all tied up, and they just have, like, among sports bettors in America, they've all heard of FanDuel and DraftKings. Big trusted brand, and then just installed player base. Like, they have those players.
Mm-hmm. It's hard.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. A few people have tried to do betting exchanges in the US, but and so they've done them legally. So it's like Polymarket. It's a club, but the problem was that they couldn't share liquidity between states because of the Wire Act. So you would have a market in New Jersey and one in Colorado, but you couldn't share liquidity. And when you can't share liquidity, it's a killer for a market.
So all this money goes to casinos, and
all of the money
to you guys,
all of the money goes to FanDuel, DraftKings,
and then the rest.
And then the rest. And then, so internationally, can they compete?
How big is the international market relative?
Oh, it's enormous.
Okay.
Well, like, it's Stake.
Like, Macau and China. Yeah.
Well, that's the offline market. If we're thinking about the online market, you would look at, like, Stake. It's $3 billion in revenue. I haven't looked at Bet365 recently, but I think they were like $8 billion or something like that in dollar terms.
That's a good market.
So, like, it's a really, these are really, really big operators. that's a totally different market from what Polymarket is doing. And so, like, there's an Irish phrase, if I was, the way I look at Polymarket, if I was wanted to go there, I wouldn't start here. Like, by that I mean, they're not going to be able to leverage U.S. political markets, which are going to be interesting for 3 months, into a winning position in like international sports betting.
Yeah.
It's a totally different market.
Yeah.
If I wanted to do that, I would do something totally different. I wouldn't start here.
Because that's the U.S. U.S. people care about U.S. sports.
Yeah, and then people who follow the U.S. are, that's what they're, following that. But trying to cross sell that into sports betting is.
I heard that they're looking to get deeper into sports.
That's smart.
Yeah,
like that is absolutely smart.
But U.S. sports for international.
There's plenty of people who follow U.S. sports, but I would definitely be looking at cricket and like we've I've started a competitor, so what I can tell you what's important. It's cricket, it's soccer. U.S. sports is important. Like U.S. sports has got a big international following, but
really, which one? NBA
and to lesser extent NFL, but NBA is big.
Yeah.
So it's but it's a it's a different market, and also all the press coverage you have in the U.S. isn't helpful if you're trying to acquire users in Latin America, India. It's again, it's like a very, very different market.
Cool. Any final questions? I had one.
Any prediction? Staying on the theme of prediction markets, any prediction for the next year
for crypto?
Anything?
Very predictions. Oof. What would I be betting on if there was a good market on it? I have no idea where prices are going. I feel that the current bull market is unearned, to be honest.
Oh, really?
I do. I think it totally is. Because, like, look what happened in 2021, right? We actually had use cases, which was NFTs, right? and we laugh at them now, but, they promised digital art, they promised digital clubs, and which were two real things that sort of normies could get their head around. And they totally failed, right? Like, but at the time there was so much excitement around that. If we look at the rally today, where's the consumer use cases? And they don't really exist. And so the things that are driving rally today are things like ETFs, which are like the most boring thing I can think of. Like, I just think that is like, I seeing people in Ethereum get excited about regulatory capture is like the most
the BlackRock.
You know that meme like 2012. The government, 2024.
When
ETF.
I think it's tragic. And when people are seeing Solana going when ETF, I'm like, that is failure. Like when we're like bull pumping an ETF, that's when we failed because we were like, well, we can't think of anything else to use it for when ETF.
It was more adversarial before with the governments, right?
Yeah.
Like decentralized money to counter, and now like if you look at the ownership of supply of Bitcoin, like
it's gonna be
the fuck.
It's all there.
We want like Bitcoiners wanting the government to buy our Bitcoin. Like what has gone wrong here? Like this is so. I don't intellectually, financially, I love this rally. Intellectually, I don't. I don't think we deserve it. Like intellectually, I still see tons of innovation in consumer, which gets me excited. I think the thing I can predict is the thing that excites us, going to surprise us. I do think that meme coins have further to run. I think the bond, and I know you're interested in bonding curves. I think they have more to run.
What do you think about bonding curves for prediction markets? I've seen some flavors of that.
Potentially.
Okay.
I think we will see another iteration of Pump.fun because I look at Pump.fun on a continuation of everyone's trying to figure out how to create a fair launch, right? Like, and Pump.fun tried to eliminate a lot of the bad things that happened in 2021. That's like, okay, we're going to force the developer to burn the keys. We're not going to let them to scoop up all the initial. We're going to put it in the bonding curve so they can't just seize everything and rug it. We're going to put in, and I do think there's a continuation there of like, okay, what else? And maybe Pump does it, or maybe somebody else does it. what else can you do to make it a fair? Now, a fair is very subjective, but fairer launch. Like, so for example, could we have more social, more of a social layer, which if you go in and rug somebody, well, you can't keep doing it, right? Maybe we should have more of that around it, that we know who the people who are involved in, and there's a social layer that stops that. People are going to continue to launch meme coins, so maybe an evolution of this platform that makes it fair, creates more fair launch, I think is something that we could see. I think I'd be excited about that. I'm still surprised we don't have a really nice resource management game. Like I'm less excited because
a strategy game.
Yeah, well, more like if we think of Football Managers, you know, as a resource management game.
Well, there's Futium.
Futium.
Haven't played it.
Yeah.
It's like I.
But it's more like fantasy.
They don't have the IP of the real players.
They don't have the IP,
right? And that's sort of a challenge. But like more of like, is there a? I'm less excited than the AAA ones because I think the challenge with those is you build it for normies and then it's why have crypto. You build it for
the AAA games are basically mid curve.
Yeah, but I think there may be, you know, fun, like, and I think I'd put Fantasy.top in that. You know, it's like it came as a bit of a surprise, but it's like it is a resource management game in a way. It is a resource management game. I think I'm hoping we'll see more of those, but I think it'll be a bit of a surprise. And yeah, so I guess that's what I'm looking for is kind of more surprises. I'm bullish on Solana because, and the reason I got into Solana in 21 was they were so focused on the consumer, they were so focused on being fast and cheap. They weren't willing to play short-term games like, oh, we will pay you to gods to stay on our chain. Like that to me was a defining moment for Solana when they said go to Polygon, right? Like that to me was because they were like, no, we're here to like deliver this, and then it hurt them in the short term. And remember all the press headlines, you know, the top NFT project has left Solana. That to me was why they one of the things it said about their DNA. So I'm still very bullish on them. I have no idea what their true price is. Because I don't know how you value a blockchain. Well, it's all. I don't know what its true price is. I'm probably bullish on an Ethereum L2. I just don't know which one. Like
Base or Blast.
Yeah, I think Base is going to be a winner. It could be like the...
Yeah, I mean, it's Coinbase.
It's Coinbase.
You can't short Brian Armstrong.
I don't love Coinbase. Like, I hope they're not a sponsor.
Well, why is that?
I just have terrible personal experiences with it. Like,
as a user?
Yeah, as a user.
Okay.
Like, it's just terrible. Like, it's just terrible experience. I've had my account, like, blocked, and then I try and customize customer service, and, you know, I put hundreds of thousands of dollars their way, and I can never get anybody on the phone. I could never get resolution on it. Yeah. I think they make some boneheaded decisions, and you know, it's just my experience. So but I think they seem to have kind of, I wouldn't call it regulatory capture, but they are like dominant in the US, and so they're going to be, I think, Base de facto is, but I think there's going to be maybe more of an Android that's going to be interesting. I thought maybe it would be Blast.
We'll see. They still, I mean,
they're still in the game. I think it's them or it's someone else. I don't really know enough about the sort of like Mega 8th or some of these other ones. I think it could be one of those that is that they absolutely get that their job is to be fast and cheap. It's not to like bore people with tech specs and all those things. My personal view is that they are going to be probably two L2 winners. And I don't think it's good for ETH, like, because I think that we're going to end up in a world where they will still be on ETH, but they will have the negotiation with ETH as to how much they pay ETH. You know, you have a situation where they can say, well, we can continue to be on you and pay the rent, or we could use a different data availability layer, or we could build our own. And that's a very bad position for ETH to be in.
Yeah,
the modular ecosystem is...
If you only have two players, two layer twos, they just have collectively too much bargaining power against ETH itself.
Yeah. And then they're not going to play nice with each other either.
Right.
Like, so there's going to be one that's going to be like our PlayStation,
like
which is saying,
completely.
they're going to be like, no, like ETH wants them all to be integrated and have bridges and it to be, but your dominant players don't. Yeah. They're actively going to work to put up barriers for you to move from base to blast.
Yep.
Because it's in their financial interest to do so. And I've already seen them starting to say we're an omni chain, we're a super chain.
Yeah.
Like, so
CDKs.
Yeah, like so.
But Blast even repositioned themselves in the blog post as a full stack chain.
Right, as a full
and there's
stack
no
chain.
no mention of the word layer 2.
Right.
Or super chain
yeah. So we already see, and like the Ethereum was one of the first blockchains I got into, and I worry about it. I do worry that they are, as a community, are just like too sort of technically orientated, that they'll continue to create white papers and create, every time I see all these sort of like infrastructure, it raises insane amounts of money. And I'm as an app builder, like I have no idea how I would use this.
Yeah, it's funny.
Not even as a consumer.
It's funny people say Solana is the VC chain, but like the reality is the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, when you give developers so many options to choose from, they just get very confused.
Right? It's like
now I got to use an ABS if I don't want to launch my own token or economic security. Like it just
like to me as like building on a chain, the infrastructure that I care, like building on Solana, obviously primarily, I'm like, I care about wallets. I care about onboarding. And then I care about fast and cheap.
Yep.
And when I look at a lot of the stuff that's got funding on the ETH ecosystem, and I'm like, I don't think it does. Very little of it does any of this stuff.
And the consumer.
ETH, it's about intellectual satisfaction.
Yeah, and that's like not a great place to be.
And you're a app developer
for that ecosystem. I do think there will be, because I do think the community is so big that they will then embrace an L2, whether it's base or another one. And maybe there's a nod to ETH, but I think it's a very dangerous place to be if I'm a sort of ETH maxi, to think that just because base does well or this other one does well, that ETH will go up, because I don't think the value capture back to ETH is very strong.
The layer 2 captures the end user, not.
I think they capture and like there's if you think of any other industries where they capture and own the end user, they're the ones who capture the value. Especially when they have, which I think they will have, which is they have choice. All right, they don't have to be on ETH.
And Base is getting paid for it too by Optimism.
Right. Yeah. So it's so that one for me long term. I think that plays out over a very long term.
Yeah, 6 years. Is the commission that they're earning from.
Right. Yeah. And so, like it's going to be interesting to see how it plays up. Like what the price of Solana or ETH is in the next 1, 2, 3 years. I have no idea, and I don't think anybody else does. It's always kind of fascinating. People having prognosis on it. Like no idea.
We're at time, but it was good chatting. For those that's listening, hit subscribe. But thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Thanks.
Cool.
That was great.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we went at 2 hours exactly.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Oh. When do you put it up? When do you push to?
2 days.
In 2 days.
Oh, cool. Oh.
As always, the views expressed in the Good Game podcast are personal to the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of any other person or entity. Nothing here should be construed or relied upon as investment, legal, tax, or other advice.
Thanks for listening to Good Game. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week.